This is our official opening ceremony for the 2021 UCGIS Symposium. Our theme this year is Advancing GI Science Informed Policy Solutions. My name is Diana Sinton, and I am the Executive Director for UCGIS. I'm really pleased to welcome you to this session. This is really exciting that we are here in another virtual platform right now. This is probably is new to many of you. This is called Hop-In. We have put in the main event question and area section a user's guide for Hop-In, especially if you are a presenter and you haven't been to one of our many practice sessions. You should definitely look at that. But when you get a chance, click on over on the event tab over to the right, and you'll be able to see that there's a Q&A that has that will stay up throughout the 3-day event, where you can have some of your general conference-wide questions posed and answered. I would very, very much like to thank the audience here today. And I really want to thank the people whose pictures you see up on that screen, the Symposium Program Committee. They have been working really, really hard for many, many months to pull this all together, figure out how this is all going to be. We've got 3 days full of programming, some really exciting content. I'm going to highlight some of these things right now. Let's see, I have to advance this slide here. There we go. I would like to thank our financial sponsors. I would like to thank the Spatial Sciences Institute at University of Southern California, to Esri, to the GIS Certification Institute, to Cal State Long Beach, to Rowan University and University of Minnesota. These organizations and institutions have provided very generous financial support, and it's because of them that we're able to offer student awards. So you'll see later we have awards that are going to be administered, given to students for lightning talks, students for regular paper presentations, and students for our poster gallery. So you'll be hearing more about that. But thanks to all of our financial sponsors for this. We have a really busy 3 days. I'm highlighting some of the sessions that are today, Monday, June 7th. We have just concluded with our first opening panel, GI Science Informed Evaluations of COVID-19 Policy Responses. That was held a couple of hours ago, or just concluded about 20 minutes ago now. It was recorded. As I said before, the sessions are being recorded, and we will have them up on the website by next week. Just a little highlight here of some of the other great things we have coming up this afternoon. Very shortly we'll have our UCGIS at 25 panel and also our award ceremony. After that, we're going to have a session of peer-reviewed papers, environmental sustainability-based policy solutions. We have a session, panel session later today on unmanned aerial systems and policy implications. And then our last one tonight is going to be faculty and librarians co-teaching with GIS. So all sorts of exciting things. I'd also like to give a great shout out to Kate Raber-Musser, who's our co-chair of our Communications Committee. Kate is the one who's been responsible for pulling together these great banners that we have, and who's really doing a fantastic job promoting our activities over Twitter as well this week too. So Kate, thank you so much for all the work you've been doing. Tomorrow, we will have our plenary talk with Dr. Leah Shanley, who's the Executive Director of the International Computer Science Institute. Leah has a tremendous amount of experience in the world of GIS and policy interactions, and that's going to be really great. That'll be on our main stage. We have lightning talks tomorrow. We have a GIS for community health session tomorrow, smart and resilient cities. And then one of the final sessions tomorrow, just to highlight it a little bit, is one that's going to be organized by the chair of our education committee, Dr. Forrest Bolick. One thing that's different about that one is that that is not going to take place here on Hop-In. That's going to be over at a Zoom that Forrest will be hosting at UMass Amherst. So we'll make sure that that link goes around for everybody to get it. But that session will not be here on Hopin. It'll be it'll take place on Zoom. Wednesday, third and final day, we've got a panel of mapping social and spatial inequality. We've got a panel on professional ethics and GI science and public policy. We have our second lightning talks, and then we're going to have our semi-annual council meeting. Any of you are very welcome to attend our council meeting. You'll hear a little bit of our business news, our updates, reports from our committee chairs. We'll also be announcing the election winners from our board of directors election, which is going on right now. You get to hear about a new university that's going to be joining UCGIS. So it's a business meeting, but it's also a chance to learn a lot about what's going on with our organization. And you will also get to hear some few words from our incoming president, Jane Reed from Syracuse University, and our incoming executive director, Erin Addison, who's going to be joining us at the organization in July. Every day we've got some social things. We have coffee lounges in the mornings. That the coffee lounge and the happy hour are both times when any shows up is able to share their audio and video and chat with whoever else is there. It's very informal, no host, no agenda. Feel free to stop by. The happy hour today, Monday, the first opening night one, is for students only. So only if you registered with a student's ticket will you be able to get into that. So grad students, undergrad students, find each other there, say hi. We also have our poster gallery, which is not here in Hopin. The poster gallery is over on the main UCGIS website. There's a link to it there, and you'll be able to get to it on the website directly too from the Symposium site. And I want to remind you that at any point, as long as the Symposium is open, 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern to 9 o'clock at night Eastern, please stop by the expo hall that has the booths, the virtual booths from 15, 16 different universities and other organizations that have booths with lots of interesting information. Some of them are going to be staffed throughout the time, so they won't always just be materials to go through, but lots of stuff to check out there. So that's happening every day. Take advantage of all this great stuff. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Jeremy Menace, my co-conspirator in organizing this entire symposium right now. Jeremy is the president of UCGIS. He's at Temple University. It's been wonderful to work with him over the last year, and he and also our president, our past president, Karen Kemp, retired from the University of Southern California. Karen and Jeremy are the moderators of this panel we're about to begin, a commemorative panel of UCGIS after 25 years. So, Karen, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Diana. Welcome, everyone. I'm just so happy to have everyone here, and thank you for joining us. Thank you, Diana. And I'm just really happy that we're able to do this. This is our second year of an online UCGIS symposium. And well, I miss everyone. I will tell that, and I hope to see you all soon. But this is what's happening now. So I'm really looking forward to an exciting event. I have a few opening remarks just to prepare for this panel. So I'm just going to share my screen for a few minutes. Okay. That is not what I want to do. I'm going to leave and come back, and that may solve my problem. Hold on one second.
Well, I'll talk. Hello, everyone.
Okay.
There. I was keeping them busy, Jeremy.
Thanks. I'm having a little trouble sharing my window. Oh, maybe I can do my Chrome tab. There we go. Okay. All right, thanks. So, Karen, thanks so much for joining me. I just have a couple slides to show everyone, and then we can turn to our panel. But the theme of the conference is about GI science informed policy, and conversely, policy informed GI science. It's been a challenging year, I know, for all of us. The coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, the economic implications of that, the social justice struggles that have happened this year, the natural disasters, the political upheaval, and so on. And I want to just acknowledge everyone whose lives have been affected by these particular events this year. But I actually want to talk about more specifically UCGIS and its relationship to these particular events because it's particularly pertinent to the symposium. Really what this is about is how our community, our academic community, the GI science community, can address, these societal challenges and hopefully make improvements. And conversely, it's what do these challenges mean and how can they inform basic research, education, and policy within the realm of GI science. And then I also want to talk about the role of UCGIS, and that is in some sense what this particular panel right here is related to, is what can UCGIS do as an organization in terms of addressing these challenges that face all of us. And this is an opportunity also, since UCGIS recently turned 25 years old, to look backwards and forwards at the same time so that our responses moving forward can be informed by what's happened in the past. This is just a little screenshot of the history of UCGIS page. UCGIS was started in 1984, but our first bylaws were adopted in 1995. Here's our first few presidents right here of the organization. It's an opportunity to look backward and ask where have we been, an opportunity to look forward and ask where we're going, and also how we can make a healthy and vibrant organization and a healthy and vibrant GI science higher education community. Because for me, those are really, overlapping about 90%. A healthy UCGIS is a healthy GI science higher education community and vice versa. It might be worth it just to look for a second at the UCGIS bylaws when they were first adopted in 1995. I don't need to read them all off, but just to hit a few highlights, you see some keywords. Theories and methods, you see the word policy there, you see education, ethics, you see this idea of collaboration and interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary work, networking, in other words. And you see this important part about advancing national priorities, addressing things like infrastructure, environment, economics, efficiency in government, democratic participation, leadership in science, math, and engineering. I mean, these are things that are very resonant to me, at least, right at this present moment. And it overlaps, I think, pretty nicely with the current mission of UCGIS from our own web page now, which is, to advance research, education. You see the word policies and ethics, and this idea of having a strong higher education community that UCGIS is so important. And that's what this panel is about. And I'm really happy to have these panelists here today. And I invite our panelists at this time to actually turn on their webcam, and I'll have you join, and I'll introduce you. And Karen, thanks so much. So we have with us Xiomi Wan from the University of Illinois, and Xiomi was UCGIS president in 2017. We have Lakshmi Ramasubramanian from San Jose University, who was UCGIS president for 2 years, 2013 and 2014. And we also have John Wilson from the University of Southern California, who was UCGIS president in 2006. Unfortunately, Bill Huxhold couldn't be with us here today at this moment, but he was also originally part of it and was UCGIS president in 1999, and he is emeritus professor at University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And of course, I'm joined by my co-organizer of this session, Kemp, who is emerita professor at University of Southern California also. Very good. So thanks to all of you for being here today. And so what I've asked for the presenters to do is just talk a little bit about what UCGIS was like when they were president of the organization. I mean, more things change, the more they stay the same. I don't know. We'll find out. But maybe we can go in this order. So Xiaowen, maybe you go first, and then Lakshmi, and then John. And then after that, I'll turn it over to Karen, who has some questions for our panelists. And then I also invite our audience members to ask any questions they would like, and you can put that in the chat as well. So Xiaowen, are you ready to go?
Sure. Can you hear me, Jeremy?
I can.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, Karen, and Diana, for putting this amazing program together this year. I know how challenging this has been for all of us, and also great seeing you, Lakshmi and John. It's been a little while. Very much look forward to seeing you in person in the not too distant future. So I'm going to follow the script Jeremy provided for some general introductions. I'm Xiomi Wan, professor and head of the Department of Geography and Geographic Information Science at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I'm also directing UIUC's CyberGIS Center for Advanced Digital and Spatial Studies. I was asked to say a few words about what I did when I was UCGIS president in 2017. I was working on three interrelated elements as I was serving the president. The number one is integration of research and education, and as Jeremy mentioned, as part of our bylaws, and noticed that GIS was rapidly evolving in the past few decades, and how UCGIS as an organization to bring communities together to integrate research and education. Related to that was workforce development as the second component, because we recognize as the field is rapidly changing, how we prepare the future generation to be ready for this rapid change and contribute to the exciting development of the field. The third element was to democratize GIS capabilities, in particular CyberGIS and geospatial data science capabilities to the broader communities. So the topic of CyberGIS and geospatial data science, I happen to have a little bit more familiarity than a number of other areas in the broad landscape of GIS. So specific activity, I helped working with a number of fellows in the UCGIS organizations to put together this summer school program, and we applied the support from the National Science Foundation, and this was to me very exciting. This summer school program addressed all those three components I mentioned. It was, I thought, a nice success, and because it was so successful, and we decided to continue that. So in 2 years later, 2019, right before the pandemic, we had the second time summer school. So the idea is to provide this platform for grad students and junior scholars to come together to form intern and transdisciplinary team to solve grand challenge problems through CyberGIS and geospatial data science approaches. And we emphasize also diversity of engaging the junior scholars and the graduate students, recognizing that's a major challenge in our field. So 2019 was also quite exciting, and we had people from the summer school invited to attend the UCGIS Symposium. Some of you attended those two symposiums. Might remember the very energetic folks from the summer schools became participants in our UCGIS Symposium. If there was no pandemic, there would be the third one, because we did have support from NSF to run the summer school again. but because of the pandemic, we had to stop the summer school program. But we do have a few pending proposals that continue to include this summer school component. My hope is that this is a great way to address those three aspects I introduced for GIS community and for UCGIS in particular as an organization to go forward. I'll stop here. Very much look forward to our discussions among ourselves and also with the participants today.
Thanks, Xiaowen. Appreciate your comments. Laxmi, would you like to go next?
Can you hear me, Jeremy?
Yes, I can.
So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to join you on this panel. Like Xiaowen said, it's really nice to see everyone, even though it's in this virtual environment. Just wanted to say that I became the president for 2 years quite by accident because a previous generation of presidents had decided that they were going to alter the structure. And the way it was set up was that the people who changed the structure were not supposed to benefit from the change in that structure. So then the next person who got elected ended up with that 2-year arrangement. I think, Jeremy, you'd asked us to speak about some of the context during that time. And when I inherited the presidency, we had realized that there was a lot of internal work to do as the association. And that's often the trend for associations that have been around for a long time, like UCGIS. You go through ups and downs. And it was a time where we had to pull back and reflect about what the association itself was doing. So we did strategic planning when I was the president, and maybe that makes sense because I'm a planner, so we did strategic planning. But then we also realized that we needed to change the bylaws. Because if you look at the bylaws from 95, the wording is different from the bylaws. The mission and the scope have changed a little bit. And that was possible only because we were able to do some internal reflection. And the internal reflection relates to this eternal question of what UCGIS is. What is the value proposition of UCGIS, which is the question you posed to us, Jeremy. It's like what, and you answered the question in a way because you said a good field is connected to a good association, is connected to a vibrant higher education community, and you link the three together, and that is the value proposition. But each generation has to articulate it for itself, and we did that in the time that I was president. I came to that position on a platform of diversification and engagement and reaching out to broader communities. And I'm so grateful and appreciative for my co-conspirators at that time on the board, including you, Jeremy, and others who, Xiaowen, I think, was around at that time as well. So we're all partners, co-conspirators in sort of this diversification of our field, reaching out to communities beyond, our hothouse environment. And I think we've succeeded a great deal thanks to the seeds that were planted back then. Because I think now, like you see how vibrant the field is and has reached not only the traditional disciplines that we used to associate with GI science, but now how widespread our field, the reach of our field is. And I think that the work we did back then contributed to a great extent to this reach. And last but not the least, I think I'll take a little bit of credit for helping hire Diana Sinton as our executive director. And so I was supported in my work by folks maybe who are not here as well, Tim Niages and Steve Prager, who are the past president and the president-elect. So I'll stop there and then see where we go.
Thanks very much, Laxmi. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? It's
I
good?
can.
Yeah. All right. So hello, everybody. I'm John Wilson. I'm the founding director of the Spatial Sciences Institute at the University of Southern California, and I'm a professor in the School of Architecture, the Dornsife College of Letters, Arts and Sciences, the Keck School of Medicine of USC, and the Viterbi School of Engineering. And I promote geographic information science, and I practice geographic information science in all of those venues. So I was president, well, let me start by saying that I took myself to what was once a winter meeting. Within a matter of days, I found myself as the research committee chair, and then I stumbled to my first summer meeting, I think in Athens, Georgia, where among other things I met Jeremy, where my task was to run a 2 or 3 day meeting for us to have a vibrant discussion and come to some consensus about research priorities that then eventually became a book. And so it was sort of a baptism by fire. I then went to the board of directors, and I was fortunate enough to be elected president, I think for the year 2006. My strategy, like most things in life, was to learn from all of you, and where appropriate and possible to give back. And I've been doing that now for close to 25 years or so, thereabouts. When I was president, my main contribution, I think, was that I promoted the idea and did much of the legwork to establish the Fellows Program. There was a series of budget challenges that had two causes. One, the meetings used to be free, even when they were in person, and they were becoming larger, and therefore they cost more. And our budget wasn't growing at the same speed as our costs. So that was one problem. The other problem was that at the beginning, the organisation was fortunate enough, and the federal government was organised in a way where they could make contributions for which they expected nothing in return. And so there were two sort of $50,000 organisational members that during my year as president went bye-byes. Well, one went away completely, and the other one, the money had to be transformed into something that provided a deliverable. In other words, we couldn't use it to sponsor our meetings. And so there was a lot of churning at that time, and I think we started a process of reaching out. I was fortunate enough to follow Nina Lamb as president, and Nina had started, and I continued a series of exploratory engagements and conversations with the emergency management and the intelligence community that I think have blossomed in the last 15 years or so. And so I remember that time fondly. And with that, I'll stop.
Thanks. That was great. I appreciate all your views. So we have time till about 2 o'clock for a great discussion. For audience members, I encourage you to type any questions into the chat, and I'll be monitoring that. And now I would like to turn it over to Karen Kemp, who is the immediate past president of UCGIS. And I am fortunate enough as current president to follow her in the presidency. And I would also point out, as I turn it over to you, Karen, that you have been affiliated with UCGIS for a very long time, since the initial meeting. So you have a great perspective to add as well. So I'll turn it over to you now to lead the discussion. Thanks.
Thanks. The one person that's missing on the panel, as Jeremy already explained, was Bill Huxhold. We had really hoped to reach way back to some of the earlier presidents to get the whole generational effect. Unfortunately, I guess I'm it at this point in terms of reaching all the way back to the beginning. I wasn't in the early days involved as a president, so my engagement with the big picture wasn't like what you've just heard from these other presidents. I was much more in the trenches, actually like typing up the bylaws and making sure they got distributed to everybody. But those early days, we had lots of great conversations, as you'd expect, about what our objectives would be. The very first meeting in Boulder, it's too bad we couldn't have recorded it, because it would have been a very interesting historical, sociological record of how a bunch of academics, you know, hammer out a vision statement for a field. And so that original meeting and follow-up ones where we talked some more produced our original set of objectives. And they were very important. Those objectives and the goals were absolutely our marching orders. And everybody who was in that room at the beginning was behind us pushing the field forward through this set of objectives and mission statement. As you can imagine, very finely tuned wordsmithing went on. So my first question to the other panelists is to reflect on, and we have provided them with the language from the original bylaws, to reflect on what we said was the mission and what we said was the goals, which Jeremy has shown you. And really, they're not that far off where we are now, but I think they have a little bit of a slightly different sense to them than our current vision. So we'd like some reflection on those original objectives, whether we actually met them and how they may have evolved in this 25 years. So that's the first question I'd like to put on the table. Maybe I'll ask John. I'm going to put you guys in reverse presidential order this time. So, John, you were closer to those original objectives. What's your sense of where we've moved?
Well, I think, Karen, it's a super hard question to answer because everything around us has changed substantially. So maybe I'll situate that first and then I'll try and answer your original question. I'm working on a manuscript at the moment in which, among other things, I decided to look at the character of the community as well as the kinds of academic publishing outlets available. And I'm pretty comfortable that there are at least 30 professional and academic organizations around the world that have a major stake in GI science, as we probably would all understand it. Some are interested just in the academy, some about the academy and the practice communities, some from a computer science perspective, some from maybe a geography, social science kind of background. And then the same is true in terms of academic journals. If you think of three building blocks, GIS, cartography and remote sensing. And then you think about journals that are very GIS centric but application oriented around those. And that number is certainly at least 30, right? And so when you carry a swath over 25 years, you know, we could have counted either of those two things on the fingers of one hand. All that time ago. And so the enormity of the change around us, I think, has to be understood as, at least as I try to answer your question. I've been a little bit disappointed at times because there was too much, at least in my opinion, too much focus on theory and basic science or basic research. And we used to turn our back a lot on what we might call applied research. And I see the two as complementary pieces of us maximizing the ways that we could contribute to the world at large. And, you know, sometimes I worry that that's an opportunity lost. And but lately I've been enthused that we seem to be moving in that direction. And, you know, at least in this body of knowledge project that I'm trying to shepherd to the finish line. For the first time, you know, we have a whole kind of knowledge area that's about domain applications. And, you know, there's a there's about 10% of all the topics that I'm trying to publish that are just in that section. When in previous times we used to turn our back on those kinds of opportunities, and they appear large now. And if we want to maximize our relevance and impact in the world, we need to embrace the whole field, the theory, the development and implementation of methods, and the practice opportunities, and to glide seamlessly between those things. I'll stop there.
That's a perfect summary of a lot of our early conversations. The switch from a very strong focus on theory to the benefits of broadening what we believe is acceptable academic exercise. And so I appreciate very much that you picked that up, because of course it was a point of stress in the earlier days, and it seems to be perhaps even gone now, I suppose, that even the people who were very strong on the theory only focus at the beginning, some of those people who are still working, the younger ones, are quite engaged with practice as a demonstration of theory. And so it's nice to see them allowing practice to be part of science. So thanks, John. Let's see, then forwards in time would be Laxmi next.
Karen, I'd like to touch upon another point of change or tension that I think my cohort of colleagues noticed. There was, in the early days, I think I came around, I think in 2001, 2002 as a student to UCGIS meetings when they were still small, and the winter meeting was still small and intimate and on the shadow of the Capitol and all of that. It seems to me in the early days there was this sense that UCGIS would be a central coordinating entity and a sort of a gatekeeper in a way of a lot of GI science decision making for the nation. And what we found by the time in 2012, 2014 is that because of the points John just mentioned, the field had changed. There was a diversity of actors and in the space, and we weren't doing, we could not play that kind of centralized, coordinating, authoritative, defining the field, because the field had just grown so big. And so I think I think it was a gradual shift, but at some point we had to say, you know what, we're not going to be in the business of telling folks what the field is about, or an ally and a partner, because there are many, and that seemed pretty significant to acknowledge for the community. And I'm not sure that I think acknowledging it in the mission statement was a big shift. The other shift was then, like John talked about the theory practice, there was also the research teaching, right? And sort of to continue to lift up teaching, that if you're in the higher education space, you got to care about teaching, and thinking critically about what we do matters. And I think that we probably struggled with that. We always cared about teaching. We struggled with how to articulate that, and I think we're still struggling a little. So that's a little bit of the disappointment that I may share about how we still struggle with the lifting up of our core mission of teaching.
Yeah, great observation, and that has such a fluidity into where we are today with COVID everybody learning that teaching is actually takes some effort. You don't just take your notes and stand in front of the class. So that's an interesting observation, that evolution from, as John observed, the theory to engage practice, and then research to lift up and engage and involve education at a much stronger level. That's a really nice sense of a flow of evolution. And of course, it's absolutely moving strongly in that direction right now. At least this year, well, everybody knows that teaching is hard, and that there are some things we could all learn about how to teach and to lift up teaching and all of that. We have so much to learn now about teaching. The other point you just made about the gatekeeper, that was a good observation. I find that useful. It's a good language for how the group thought of themselves at the very beginning. That was important. It was the role to do that. So initially it was, the great purpose was to be a group pushing this field in a sort of recognizable entity forward, and it needed to be in that kind of gatekeeping. But yes, absolutely, that had to fall away in order for all these other things to come up. Yeah, thank you. That was useful. All right, Xiaowen, moving further into the current day, how do you feel when you reflect back to the beginning of the organization?
Well, certainly I was not even in my college when UCGIS was founded, so I could not go back that far. But just my little experience in terms of the recent development of UCGIS and looking at the history books of how UCGIS has been evolving, I would give a very simple assessment. I think UCGIS has achieved a lot. We should be proud of ourselves. I know there was ups and downs, and we had to deal with challenges. I was serving as board of directors. In fact, when Lakshmi was the president, I, was so impressed about your leadership, Lakshmi, to get us through some of the difficult times. But overall, I think given what this organization was set out to do, there was a lot of, I think, successful stories. Let me give you a few as concrete examples, because I think the attendees here are quite diverse in terms of their knowledge about our organization. So as a student, I came to UCGIS. UCGIS provided me with very easy access to the leaders of the field. So I came to UCGIS for a few initial meetings. I thought, oh my goodness, those people I looked up as my role models. I could easily have conversations with these people. It's amazing, right? Where would I go to find these people, just in small group settings in other venues? No, I was not able to. So moving forward, as a junior scholar, I was invited by UCGIS to give congressional briefings about what I do. So provided the platform, I could talk to not only the role models I looked up to, but also people making decisions and policies. They had to listen to me as a junior scholar, whether I said things making sense to these constituencies and the colleagues, I don't know. But that's yet another amazing experience. Without UCGIS, my career would not have such channels and opportunities. Just for those folks, you might taking for granted these things, at least in my memory, this is not too far I could relate to in terms of how my career got shaped and influenced. Now, reflecting on what John has said, I mean, the field has changed so much since UCGIS was founded. There's no question about that. The intellectual diversity in terms of the breadth and depth of the field is so different than when GIS was started and UCGIS as an organization has formed, right? Well, whether UCGIS has evolved and adapted to this change, that's a question mark. And I think that's for every UCGIS president we have to think very hard about. The work I did a little bit focusing on integration of research, education, workforce development, and democratize the access of GIS and cyber GIS geospatial data science capabilities to broader communities. Just a few examples. These are not perfectly captured from the very beginning of the UCGIS kind of charter, the goals and objectives. But certainly these are becoming more significant issues as an organization we need to address, particularly becoming relevant. I very much like this year's focus on the policy side, because as we work toward our future, we always need to be forward-looking, and impact is a major piece of the puzzle we have to assess, given the very broad community we're now part of, how much impact as an organization we should have, and how unique we should be, because there are, as mentioned before, a lot of peer organizations or complementary organizations out there. How could we work in this ecosystem to be unique at the same time to make the most desired impact we deserve and we're striving to make? So I think these are not easy questions, but now need to be the questions always for UCGIS and particularly for UCGIS leadership. So I'm excited as ever. I think UCGIS has a bright future because the field is so exciting, and it needs an organization like UCGIS to play its role, right? Shaping the future of GIS in the higher education and using that to guide the rest of the ecosystem for making difference to better the world, because so many problems we're solving today, GIS is a perfect language to bring different expertise together to offer solutions. So I think the next 25 years is going to be even more exciting than the first 25 years, but there are a lot of things I would say we should be proud of for the first 25 years. So thank you for all the leadership and the contributions from past leaders, including certainly all of you, and those not here today. So I think we own a lot to what you've done.
Thank you. That was a real nice summing up. The things I keyed in there was shaping the future, which of course is a grand charge for our future UCGIS leaders. But when I reflect backwards on that of course is what they were doing with the big push in the very early years that John was associated with, of writing the research agendas. That it's interesting to use that language, and they were back 25 years ago with the research agenda very much trying to shape the future by articulating our community's vision of what we could do in the science. So shaping the future is an absolutely good motto for this organization. It is also a major challenge for everyone, because we have to think about the future and not just about what I'm doing today and how I can impact the world today, but what can I do for the future to move the whole thing forward. So that's a nice challenge. The other little piece you picked up that I hooted on was the people you met. It's interesting to get your perspective as somebody coming in, and Lakshmi too, but you even more recently as a student, and being part of this organization as a student. I was a student, I guess, on those first days when I was writing the bylaws, but it felt kind of different then because we were just creating the community rather than joining an existing community. And that role of UCGIS as allowing students to interact one-on-one with the names in their textbooks is a really remarkable piece of what this organization does. And then the opportunity for mentoring, which has become language that we're using in UCGIS now more than we did in the early days. So that is another piece of the evolution of actually engaging with the role of mentoring our younger colleagues or our more junior colleagues upwards. And so that I hear that comment so often from people who are, 10 years younger than I am, who have come into this. And that's an important key. It's not fully articulated in those original goals.
Can I make a quick technical interjection for 1 second? If everyone, all the panelists could mute their microphone while they're not speaking, I'll just cut down and make it clearer for everyone. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going with this great stuff.
Okay, thanks. Actually, I think I've kind of wrapped up everyone's observations there, and I was going to flip it back to the panel again to see if you had any reflections on my reflections on other people's reflections. So would anyone like to observe?
Well, I'd say, Karen, this is John again. I don't know that the Academy could ever have played a leading role in shaping both the academic and the practice communities as it aspired to when it wrote those initial bylaws and started the organisation. That they may have been good inspiration to roll up the sleeves and start an organisation, but I would have thought right from the get-go that was a bridge too far. And, I think the other struggle that maybe people have alluded to indirectly is that, the organisation could have its biggest impact, I think, not exclusively, but its biggest in a cumulative sense in the ways that it supports its members. And Xiaowen and Laxmi in various ways spoke about the ways the organisation supports the members as expressed in faculty and students, because ultimately our influences in terms of the number of students we graduate, how deeply and broadly trained they are, how inspired they are to go out and do great things themselves. And I would say that's first, because that happens much faster and is scalable in terms of volume. And second, we do that using the papers we publish, whether they be about theory or methods or practice. That in one way or another, they're all important because, writing a paper and somebody reading your paper is a very personal experience. And, if one person leaves inspired after reading a paper one of us wrote, to me, that's a job well done, right? So, I think then the modern value proposition is built in being welcoming, being inclusive, and trying to think about consciously how all of these touch points happen and how they mirror or contribute to their bigger mission.
Thanks, John. Laxmi, do you have any reflections on the reflections?
Just listening to you all and thinking about how UCGIS is an association that is built on volunteers. So every single person who's ever done a volunteer activity for UCGIS, thank you. I mean, whether it's a small thing or whether you've served on the board or you've done, and I think people sometimes forget how teeny tiny we are as an association. I mean, all the accomplished that we've done, and Shawan's right, we've done a lot and we're going to do more, but it's really supported by a very, very small infrastructure, which means we're leaning on our volunteers a lot. And there are so many people I can see who are in this session who have, who you are, you've volunteered a great deal, right? But at the same time, Karen, I think higher ed has changed since I don't know in 1995 how it was, But I think professors had a lot of freedom on how to manage their time and what causes they devoted themselves to and how they managed their students' labor and their labor and how they compensated it, et cetera, et cetera. And we're in a very different space now. And as a first generation academic, as an immigrant, as a woman of color, as somebody who didn't have so many things, right? I'm grateful for UCGIS because it helped me like deal with some of those gaps in my resume. I didn't know so many things, and being part of UCGIS taught me those things. I don't know if y'all intended to teach me, but y'all taught me that. But I don't think we've formalized it yet. And we should, because democratization, as Shawan said, of the field of the people who are participating is vital for the shaping the future. And we can't, we know we have to democratize, we have to diversify, we have to be inclusive, we have to be accessible. And we were doing it before these things were talked about, but we haven't formalized it. And we haven't, going back to your comment about mentoring, we were doing mentoring, but we didn't, it's not in the, in a formal way, right? So that's my reflection.
Very useful also to not only observe the society is changing and GI science and the universe around GI science is changing, but then if we layer on the change in the academic careers in that 25 years, that's a really big piece of interesting reflection, because if you go back to the 1994 meeting where all the academics are sitting around the room, envisioning this organization and wordsmithing those goals, to be honest, they had the time and leisure and space in their heads to be thinking about things like that. The responsibilities of a professor were much different then and much more self-centered, much more self-serving. And so that the space to be able to reflect on how this organization might be and how it might lead was very different then. It would be interesting to see whether we could actually have that conversation today to keep people talking, because they're all rushing off to all the other things they have to do and all the, the extra work that everybody has. So that's an interesting observation. I don't think I could fully articulate that, but that has changed indeed, and that would have changed the evolution. Thank you. Yeah, useful. Shawan, reflections on reflection.
Reflection square. So I just want to quickly echo what first Lakshmi said. I think her personal experience is so powerful, and I do strongly believe UCGIS is well positioned to tackle this grand challenge. Jeremy was alluded to in his introductory slides, racism, inequality, these kinds of challenges our society is facing. And I think UCGIS is a powerful organization to do something here in this regard because of the nature of our field, and also I think now 25 years history we have. Now I want to broaden that a little bit. There are a number of other grand challenges. I personally also feel, with my experience, UCGIS would be quite suited to become an organization that would contribute to this thinking of solutions to grand challenges our society is facing, not just a sort of grounded in our own field, theory, method, practice, but what's happening more universally, you could even say, the kind of challenges the scientific enterprise and our society facing. I used the challenge Lakshmi was talking about, but also the challenge like sustainability, climate change, infrastructure. I mean, you could find natural plug-ins for our field, and the UCGIS should be stepping up to represent our field in those conversations to deal with these big challenges, and what our field could offer and what our field should partner with beyond the GIS field itself to engage more broadly the intellectual power from our peer fields and the related domains. So this is a more forward thinking because you were asking reflection on reflection. So I would just register this note there, certainly for the future leaders of UCGIS.
Yeah, stepping up to the grand challenges. We've used that language. Oh, there's a gecko behind me. Going up my wall. The grand challenges, of course, that has sort of circulated around every, 6-7 years. Picking up grand challenges and addressing them. In fact, we're doing that in this, we're attempting that in this program. In fact, we have global health, we have sustainability. So that's a very good point. And it is a good challenge to meet the grand challenges. But going back to Lakshmi's observation of we're a tiny little organization and it's, all volunteers, to try to formulate UCGIS around grand challenges is going to take a lot of people's engagement because of the diversity involved. So that is a grand challenge for the organization. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. It's just a grand challenge. But, a goal or something to try to lean towards, if not fully achieve. Great, thank you. All right, Jeremy, do you have any questions from the audience?
Forthcoming with questions from the audience. Yeah. So we've got a great panel of experts here. So audience, you're welcome to weigh in with any questions. We've got a lot of softballs going about, all the great stuff. So feel free and throw them. All right. Well,
we're waiting for them to come in. I'm going to jump ahead because I'm very interested in talking about what we can learn from the pandemic. How can our challenges and our difficult year and a half, what can we learn? What can UCGIS learn from the challenges we've overcome during the pandemic? Can we pull those learnings into shaping the future of UCGIS? That's an even harder question than my first one, John. Microphone.
Yeah. Well, I certainly don't know the answer, Karen, but I can say the kinds of bets that myself and my group are making at USC here. I would guess first is the pandemic has reinforced all of the things that were probably good and bad about the world, no matter how we cast our view of the world here. So, the haves will emerge not completely unscathed, but with less suffering and less damage than people that were not so well positioned or well off, right? And all of the things that are on Jeremy's opening slide and that my colleagues here have spoke about are super important. And if the pandemic was to help advocate for those, that would be a tiny little silver lining to what's been a hugely sad and challenging time for virtually everybody on the planet. Now, what for education, what I think we're going to all have to struggle with and wrap our heads around is that young people are going to have a completely different relationship with their institution and with the expectations I think they have for those institutions. So, telling somebody they need to be, this many hours in a classroom with professors every week, and that they need, if they're taking lab classes, to spend 2 hours in a room with 20 other students with 20 computers with a graduate teaching assistant or somebody else, I think that's all going to go by the bye-bye pretty quickly here. So, in my case, I'm building a couple of very high-end classrooms so that we can support synchronous and asynchronous education simultaneously, that we can do it in person and remote education simultaneously. It just takes a large infusion of resources first to set myself up to do that, and then to be able to do that. So that's a tactical issue, but I think it extends beyond that. I don't know what the numbers are for UCGIS, so maybe I'll just use the Esri user conference as an example. I've been to every Esri user conference since, I think, 1986, when I first got introduced to GIS. The last, I don't know how many, have been in San Diego, and, there's been a steady state 18,000 people that attend those meetings. Last year, at a moment's notice, Esri, of course, like everybody else, had to pivot to online, and it's not been lost, I think, on the organization that there was, 100,000 or more people at the plenary sessions for that meeting. And so for Esri, I'm sure that they're very fond of the idea they'll go back to San Diego and that they will meet in person 18,000 of their faithful every year. But I think the conference centers of the future are going to have to manage high-end video conferencing, because if I were the leadership of Esri, I'd want to continue meeting with the 60 or 80,000 people that, for whatever reason, can't or wouldn't come to San Diego. So, you may be thinking, well, God, this is the second year in a row we've had to pivot to a remote meeting. But I would guess that some kind of hybrid is the future. The big debate on our campus here now is, well, can an academic unit insist on in-person monthly meetings? And, there's a wide range of opinions, but if I was to put a bet on, I'm going to say the answer is no. That all future kind of administrative meetings in the university are going to have to be dealt with in hybrid. And then in my case, in my little institute, we will have no more labs where the labs are done in a classroom. I'm a proponent of spatial computing, spatial thinking anywhere, anytime. And so there will be lab meetings in which we talk about the future lab and reflect on the previous lab. But the students will now have the opportunity to do their labs wherever they want, whenever they want, over the course of a week in each week of the semester. So, I personally think this is an opportunity for us to engage more people and more varied people in a whole bunch of new ways. And I think we've been working our butts off here to think about how we do that. And I think for professional societies, they will probably want to begin now thinking about the new terms of engagement going forward, so that rather than see this as a challenge, perhaps they can turn it into a relatively large opportunity.
Good observation about the roles of the professional organizations and the roles of our meetings. The flip side of that, of course, and it's related to the conversation I had with Lakshmi earlier last week or whenever, about actually emerging from the pandemic and meeting people face to face, sitting at a table and having conversations. Mm-hmm. What a unique experience suddenly to have that freedom of a bunch of people sitting around a table. So on the one hand, we have this evolution of how we're going to have these professional meetings and administrative meetings. On the other hand, we need to figure out what the face-to-face gives us. And particularly for, I've had this conversation about labs, and a lot of people concerned about not being able to put their hand on someone's shoulder. Oh, can you do that anymore? Maybe you can't. But leaning into the computer with the student and engaging at the same time in a way and feeling their emotions and seeing, you know, why they're holding back and all of that sort of social interaction. So now we have to, it's like learning how to teach again. We have to learn how to engage with people. What are the benefits of that engagement, and can it be done virtually, or does it have to be done face-to-face? Big questions. Lakshmi, I'd like you to chime in on that little conversation we had about a meal.
I was talking about going back to meeting my work colleagues immediately after we're all vaccinated and meeting in a social setting. And the point I was making to Karen, I think this is the example she's thinking of, is that we were at once together and also apart, in the sense of we were in the same group, but there were 4 or 5 conversations going on. And somehow as people, when we're in a social situation, we know how to navigate that, right? So you have the group conversation, and then there's sidebar conversations going on, and it's a very different dynamic than what we have with the Hollywood Squares situation, right? And I think that John is right. I think that the technology will evolve to accommodate that diversity of engagement, and it has to, in order to expand the reach. And then we all in our professional societies and in our meetings have to decide, what are we going to accomplish if we actually choose to come together? And I think UCGIS has a history of thinking about this, right? Because there was this whole thing about, we're not a conference. We are a symposium. We are a convening. We are a gathering. And the founders did think about this, and they talked about the value of coming together as this sort of exchange of ideas and lofty conversations in a atmosphere that was conducive to that. And I still don't know if that's viable for the junior scholars, and we've always struggled with that, but that might be still something worthwhile to visit, whether we can fund our junior scholars to come and participate in those conversations in those ways, whether we can find sponsors to support that kind of face-to-face dialogue, which we see as valuable. I'll stop there.
And Xiaowen, your comment earlier about democratizing the technology, which was different. It was about giving us all access to high-end, difficult to access technology. But does that play into the same conversation? Where does the personal versus virtual interaction come in that context?
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed learning from the points made by John and Lakshmi. I think the democratization angle we were discussing is related to this future post-pandemic. Particularly, I think from another angle, which is this digital divide we're still experiencing, not only in the US, but perhaps more so beyond the US in developing countries. As much as we enjoy this, I think, very cool platform. And I got pulled into a few similar platforms for all these events beyond Zoom over the past year or so. So we have to also recognize this uneven access and associated uneven opportunities presented to the very broad population we need to be thinking about. So that's a major challenge we have to think about. But also, I think, as much as we've learned how to get things done in the past 14, 15 months in this pandemic, we need to recognize the value of social interactions, in-person experience, as part of learning, as part of research, especially I think the younger generations, junior scholars, graduate students, if they don't meet in person with other people and the more established folks, this really understanding between people and ultimately the opportunity for collaborations and for mentoring would be limited. And I think we need to appreciate such limitations as we transition from the pandemic to post-pandemic. But I think a bigger challenge, of course, for the higher education is today, both for private and public institutions, the cost of education is too high. As a positive note, I think the pandemic has really informed us going into the future, how do we optimize the process for better learning and for better research? Because as far as before the pandemic, the cost was high enough, we had to wonder about the sustainability of the higher education enterprise, both for research and education. And this pandemic, in fact, even forced us, in a way, to think harder about the sustainability of higher education and some positive learning, some perhaps more challenging factors we have to weigh in for the future of higher education. So I think UCGIS could play a role for understanding such challenges by putting the community together into some discussions for figuring out what will be the best way forward. I do want to, I do want to note there are some questions and comments coming to the chat box.
Yep, that's just, I was going to transition to those.
Okay. I enjoy talking to each other here, but
you.
at the same time, I think we want to get some inputs from the audience.
Exactly. So Jeremy, you're ready with some thoughts on the conversation out there in the audience.
Sure, I'd be happy to jump in. I didn't want to interrupt everyone's such great thoughts here, but let me take the first question from David Tulloch. And he says, it was mentioned that UCGIS previously had more formal relationships with federal agencies, while the group was also more interactive with policy. And the question is, what do you think is the future of UCGIS and its interactions with agencies and policy? So happy to open the floor to any of you who'd like to respond to that.
Well, I think it probably stems from comments I made. So I think it's unrealistic in today's climate to think that agencies would give us as large sums of money as they did at the beginning, with few, if any, strings attached. We live in a society now where most things have been commoditized, and so they will provide resources if something commensurate is returned from us to them. And there are probably still opportunities to do that by convening specialty work groups or specialty workshops and specialty publications and so forth. But that depends on the energy and foresight of the members and the individuals at member organizations, meaning here universities. I think that practically the way to participate in policy and so forth is for us to try to support our constituents, faculty and graduate students and other people that join us to participate in these national debates around the FGDC, around NJAC and the organisation that run the GIS certification process, and other similar organisations like US Geospatial Intelligence Foundation and the Open GIS Consortium. So there are lots of ways for us to be engaged in those things and to provide forms of leadership, little forms as well as big forms. But I think we need to be more nimble and more flexible and more nuanced than the original vision, which was that we'd bring a group of lawmakers to a nice breakfast in the Capitol, and they would leave charged to pass a piece of legislation that would send us $25 million a year to do what we want with, right? That has all changed.
Yeah, and I think that's really great comments. And I would just also point out that there's so much more funded GI science related work now than there was 25 years ago. So in that sense, and I'm not saying that's all because of UCGIS necessarily, but UCGIS has certainly played a central role in facilitating that. So in that sense, UCGIS has been incredibly successful in helping and meeting one of the initial objectives. But certainly the landscape or how that has happened has changed a lot over the years. But I also like what you said about engaging with these different organizations that are really closely involved with GI science funding and policy. I think that's really important for the organization. So I appreciate that comment. But I'll open the floor to others who want to react to that, or John, if you wanted to add another comment.
Go ahead.
If I may add to the comment that John made, John said we should sort of empower our faculty. And I think there's still a role for UCGIS to continue to play to help faculty speak to policymakers. And I think that it is a style and a way of engaging with policymakers at different sort of levels of government. And I think for newer scholars, for junior scholars, that's still something, that's a service that senior scholars could offer in the context mediated by UCGIS to say this is how you're likely to be more successful in talking to policymakers in your state, in your county, in the federal government. And I think there's a space for that for UCGIS.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I think a few perhaps specific suggestions is number one, this particular angle is, I think, critical for UCGIS. UCGIS had success in the past at the beginning years of the organization, as John mentioned, with a few successful modalities, but the field has changed so much. So one specific suggestion, I think, is similar to what John was alluded to. I think we need to be more targeted in terms of engaging a particular agency or stakeholder. It cannot be broad brush as used to be, because the context is pretty massive. And we also need to be more dependent on our members, recognizing a lot of diverse work has been done, and we need to be, in a sense, proactive to discover what folks are doing out there, and then selective in terms of prioritizing certain agencies and stakeholders, because UCGIS is not a huge organization. We need to be focused, but I think for particular area in terms of the policy side, once we determine the priority, we need to be persistent in order to make impact. But just to relate to the pandemic, over the past 14, 15 months, see how much work has been done, taking advantage of the advances in GIS for decision support and, tracking the spread, understand impact and inequality issues. The GIS play a huge role to understand the implications there. That tells me the opportunity space is pretty big. I think for UCGIS, we just need to figure out the focus and priority and make sure it's not too big in terms of the scope, and then take concrete steps and plug those back to the broader ecosystem, and make sure our peer institutions, organizations understand what we could do.
Jeremy, I could just say to amplify Xiaowen's comments. In a couple of weeks in Transactions in GIS, there will be a paper that appears in early view that is 10 times longer than the recommended length for a manuscript. The references cited is longer than the recommended length of a manuscript, and the purpose of the manuscript is to review all of the geographically inspired work around COVID-19 that was published between the 1st of July and the 31st of December last year. So it's a really big review. It's a narrative. There's not much analysis in it, but it really reinforces this idea that there are a lot of very creative, active, energetic, aspirational scholars out there that are working in or with our domain to produce new knowledge. And you know, that speaks to the vitality and the future of the organization as well, I hope.
Thanks. Yeah, that sounds like so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you. Well, we are really at the top of the hour here, so maybe Karen, I'll turn it back over to you if you have any closing thoughts or anything for our panelists before we wrap up.
I don't think I have anything in particular to sum up with. There were plenty of good points here, and maybe one observation I could make as outgoing past president, so like I'm totally stepping out here out of this executive role. I could admit, perhaps privately, maybe I did it publicly, I don't know, didn't have a chance to talk to anyone in my year because we were all in pandemic. I came in as president willing to close the organization because there was some sense that we had done it. We were finished. We had completed our job. And there are plenty of other organizations out there, and we don't need UCGIS anymore. My year in the organization as president convinced me that there is no reason to close this organization. There is a community that needs to be served. There's a community that wants to be served. And granted, the original vision isn't the one that would sustain us now, but there's plenty to sustain this organization into the future. So during my year as president, I evolved from, yeah, if it seems like the right thing, let's just say we did a good job and move on, to absolutely understanding this organization has a role. So how's that for a closing, Jeremy? So thank you very much. It's been very interesting. I'd love to keep having these panels off into the future. We can just keep talking about the old days, but I think we probably should go forward and talk about the future. Thank you. Thank you all. That was very inspiring.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Xiaowen. Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you, John. And thanks, Karen. Much appreciated. And I look forward to UCGIS at 26 next year, I guess. In person. So with that, why don't we conclude our panel here, and I will turn it back over to Diana, who is going to take us into our award ceremony. So we can all hit the leave button, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy, Karen, Xiaowen, Lakshmi, John, for that. We are now going to shift into the final section of this the final section of this session, which is going to be our annual awards. I'm going to share my screen again. So every year, UCGIS is honored to have nominations come from within our community, and that we recognize individuals within the individuals we recognize can come from anywhere around the globe. The opportunity to nominate comes from within our community. And we offer 3 awards each year. We have a research award, we a mentoring award, which was award named after Carolyn Mary. That award was started by former President Libby Wentz a number of years ago. And we also have an education award. A couple years ago, our education committee made a shift so that we alternate every year between a lifetime achievement award in education and an innovations in education award. We're going to be honoring the 3 individuals who review committees selected this year. We're going to do our research award first. So we're going to hear first from our chair of our research committee. So if Yongmei Liu, if you could come up on the stage. I will now, there we go. Yongmei should be joining us. And the other individuals who are trying to come up on the stage, don't do that, please. I'm trying to continue to kick some people off. Okay, Yongmei, I hear an echo, so I'm going to turn my microphone off.
All right. Am I okay? Can you hear me okay? All right. Thank you, Diana. I'm Yongmei Liu, the chair of UCGIS Research Committee. Thank you, Diana. It's my great pleasure to introduce the recipient of UCGIS 2021 Research Award, Dr. Brian Barry. Dr. Barry is a Lloyd Vidal Berkner Regental Professor in the School of Economic, Political, and Policy Sciences at the University of Texas at Dallas. Dr. Barry's achievements in spatial analysis, with an early emphasis on the regional sciences, have been transformative to our discipline. Over his lengthy career, Dr. Barry has also earned accolades such as his 1975 election to the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, at that time the youngest person ever to have been selected. His 1976 election to become Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, followed by becoming a Fellow of the British Academy in 1989. In 2005, Barry was named Laureate of the Prix International de Géographie, Vautrin Lud, considered by some as geography's Nobel Prize. Here's the recognition remarks put together by the UCGIS Research Award selection.
Yongmei, I think we just lost your microphone if you want to unmute yourself again.
Oh, sorry. All right, here's the recognition remarks put together by the award selection committee. In 1964, Barry first wrote about the geographic matrix, an analytical conceptualization of computer-aided form that arguably was predecessor of the GIS attribute table. Barry's geographic matrix aided the evolution of GIS science in surpassing technical topics and issues, promoting an appreciation of the conceptual and functional linkages between GIS and GIS sciences emerging intellectual core. A measure of the significant impact of the geographic matrix has been both the number of times that journal articles have been dedicated to its discussion and the span of time that this innovative contribution continues to be influential in research, persisting to the present time, almost 60 years since its original publication and promotion. This constitutes a profound influence of the geographic matrix on the theory and or practice of GIS science vis-a-vis geographic information technology. Barry's groundbreaking spatial analysis work in methodological and theoretical GIS science developments over many decades, epitomized by his fundamental and innovative contribution to the geographic matrix to GIS, are proving to be long-lasting transformative geospatial research contributions. So congratulations to Brian Barry. And Shall I continue, Diana?
Sure. You have the comments that Dr. Berry is not able to be with us right now. So, Youngmei, if you'd like to read the statement that he shared with us.
Yes, I do have yes, Diana said Brian Berry cannot be with us today, so I do have his remarks that he'd like us to read here. So here you go. I'm speaking now as Brian Berry. I am honored to receive this award coming 60 years after a group of brash young graduate students, Dawn Marble, John Nischun, Richard Morial, Michael Dacey, Waldo Tobler, yours truly, and others, whose 1950s groupthink is really what is being honored today, begin to resist the Hartsonian geography and pen and ink cartography of the time, fascinated by the possibility of the new computers that were emerging. Systematic spatial analysis and mathematical cartography began to evolve. By the early 1960s, I had moved to the University of Chicago and in intense debates became painfully aware of the regional systematic polarization that was dividing the discipline, as well as the emergent separation within emergent spatial science that split data handlers from those whose concerns were the theories that sought to explain why the data were patterned in the ways they were being unearthed. At short notice, I was asked, more like commanded, to appear and explain myself in a plenary session of the AAG in Miami. On a plane from the Windy City, I penned remarks that were viewed as quite controversial by many in the audience. I overheard after the session, Barry has to be stopped before he destroys geography. But I nonetheless crafted them into the paper that introduced what you now call the geographic matrix. The idea was simple and once started, painfully obvious. But it was also fundamental, which no doubt explains its longevity. What is remarkable is that not only did it contribute to changing geography, it also played a role in the emergence of new bodies of geospatial science. Our decent groupthink had become a change agent. Many thanks for recognizing the seed that was planted so many years ago. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Youngmei, for sharing that with us. And again, thank you, Dr. Berry, for sharing your comments with us. I'm sorry you couldn't be here with us today. The next award that we're going to give is our Education Award, and I would love to invite Dr. Forrest Bolick to come up here on the stage. And also, let's have, if we could, Dr. Joseph Kursky. If Joseph, I think Joseph is probably here. Yes. Here comes Joseph too. Yeah, cameras are working. Excellent. Forrest, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you so much, Diana, and thanks everybody for being here for our awards. My name is Forrest Bolick. I'm the chair of the UCGIS Education Committee, also a lecturer at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and it is my great honor this year to award the UCGIS Lifetime Achievement in GI Science Education Award to Dr. Joseph Kursky. And it is, I think, evidence in when you mention Dr. Kursky, or when you know he's coming to give a presentation or a seminar, that's everyone knows and everyone is ready to appreciate the depth and the breadth of the GIS knowledge that Dr. Kursky has. So let me read a little bit from the award citation before I get too distracted. Dr. Kursky is an education manager at Esri and an adjunct instructor at the University of Denver, in addition to teaching, it seems, at every place possible. here and there, and is internationally recognized as one of the most influential, enthusiastic, and effective proponents of education involving GIS and its related technologies in the world today. I often say, when people who have not met Dr. Kursky and are going to attend one of his sessions, I say he's the Bill Nye of GIS. And I believe that very strongly, and perhaps we should start saying that Bill Nye is the Joseph Kursky of science in general. I think you'd do great with a TV show. He's long demonstrated a career of dedication to GIS education with his unparalleled energy to produce and provision others with resources in diverse methods and applications. He's worked in many different sectors of industry, I suppose, academia, nonprofit, private, government, and has had a number of wonderful experiences in GIS. Co-authored 8 books, 100 peer-authored chapters and articles, but if you haven't before, you need to go to his YouTube page. I point students to YouTube all the time. I say, here is a great video. Sometimes they get lost into geospatial music covers, Earth-based entertainment, and I always find it very interesting whenever he finds a new lat-long site to find and map. So it is just wonderful to be able to present this award. This is my first year as chair of the Education Committee, and I'm so pleased to be able to present this award to you, Dr. Kursky. And so glad that you are here to make some remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Bolick. Many, many thanks. The most meaningful awards are those from one's peers, and when those peers have such an impact, such as you all, it's even more treasured. I've got tremendous respect for the energy, expertise, the generous spirit of the UCGIS community, and I've known many of you personally and professionally for many years, so this award is very touching to me. This, along with comments I've received from students, professional community, and others over the years, makes the things that you mentioned, Forrest, the podcasts, the books, the videos, the chapters, etc., all worth the effort. I truly believe that GIS is enabling people to build a smarter, more resilient world, as we've talked about in the last session. In education, it allows instructors to inspire and empower students, enabling them to be change agents, as was also mentioned, on their campus, and inspire others far beyond the campus borders. And so I accept this award with deep gratitude and wish to recognize the education team that I am a part of here at ESRI for their support and their tireless efforts to advance GIS in all levels and in all disciplines in education. I'd also like to acknowledge Jack Dangermond and the organization he built, ESRI, for their deep commitment to geographic science. I also thank my family for their support even when I was out on work travel. In sum, I hope I'm remembered for 3 things. 1, that people are encouraged to pursue their own career pathway that could touch nonprofit, academia, industry, and government, as mine has, because GIS is such a versatile skill, right, folks? And because geographic thinking is such a valuable perspective. Number 2, that when I promised someone that I would do something, write a chapter, conduct a presentation, create a curricular resource, I would follow through. I always wanted to be someone that others could count on, that others could trust. And number 3, that first and foremost, my goal always has been to encourage others, for them to dream big, to pursue their goals and be a force for positive change. Above all, that I really and truly cared. Many of you know that I like to inject humor in my work, so in closing, I would like to quote a Rod Stewart song. So when the sun goes low and you're home all alone, think of me and try not to laugh. Thank you, and may your own journeys continue to be full of impact, wonder, and adventure. Thank you.
Dr. Kursky, and thanks for all of the things you've done and the things you are yet to do for the GIS education community. Diana, back to you.
Oh, thank you, Forrest. Thank you, Joseph, very much. Congratulations. We're all very proud of the achievements, and we're glad that we get to call you our colleague and friend. The next award that we will have is going to be our Carolyn Mary Mentoring Award. And The person who's going to join us to deliver that on the stage is our President-elect Jane Reed. And I would also, great, Beth is here too. I'm going to advance my slide. 1 second here. And there you go. I'm going to mute myself. It's all yours.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Jane Reed. I'm President-elect of UCGIS, and it was my huge honor this year to be the chair of the Carolyn Mary Mentoring Award. This is an award that's very dear to my heart, so it gives me huge pleasure to be able to present it. So this year, UCGIS is pleased to announce that Elizabeth Beth King, Associate Teaching Professor and Assistant Program Manager of the Online Geospatial Education Program at the Pennsylvania State University, has been selected for the 2021 Carolyn Mary Mentoring Award. Beth has been affiliated with the Department of Geography and the John A. Dutton E-Education Institute at Penn State since 2000 in both teaching and management roles. Over the past 20 years, she's demonstrated exceptional mentoring abilities and practices for the almost 4,000 students who have earned the GIS certificate and Master of GIS degrees through Penn State's World Campus. We received multiple sort of accolades from various different students who Beth had been working with, and it really was an incredible application. So Beth is a master at building rapport, both in person and online, and her accolades are spoken both by students and her fellow colleagues. So congratulations to Beth. Beth, did you want to say a few words?
Yeah, thanks, Jane. It's nice to see you. I have known you since the Trellis workshop, so it's nice to see you. I just want to thank UCGIS and the review committee. I have heard and read such great things about Carolyn Mary. I never got to meet her, but my colleague Karen Schuckman knew her and said what a caring person she was. And when Lakshmi was making the comments during the panel about formation of teaching, it really made me think of all of the wonderful things people have said about her. And I want to thank Justine Blanford, David DiBiase, and Fritz Kessler. Like Carolyn did, they do a great job of encouraging and helping others succeed. And I just really appreciate them taking the time to nominate me. As Jane said, I'm in my 22nd year at Penn State. I love my job. I so appreciate my colleagues and all of our students. Also, as she said, we've had over 4,000 students complete our online geospatial education programs, and I'm continuing to be impressed by the amazing things that they have done, are doing, and no doubt will do. So thanks again.
Congratulations. Over to you, Diana.
Okay, I am still sharing. Thank you, Beth, for joining us. It was really an honor to be able to read all of the accolades from the students and all the people's lives that you've touched as you've helped them navigate that process. Seems like from the very beginning of that, the start of that program, you have played a key role in their workflows, their pathways. So congratulations. Okay, so that concludes the end of our awards ceremony. I'm going to quickly go back on my slides now just to remind people of some other things happening today. We have had our UCGIS at 25 commemorative panel. We've had our COVID-19 policy panel. We have coming up later this afternoon, starting at the top of the hour, our environmental sustainability based policy solutions collection of papers. There are going to be 5 or 6 different papers there. Several of those are being given by students who are eligible for the award. So if you are listening to this and you're one of the judges for that session, make sure you follow those instructions on that very remarkably organized and robust rubric that you've been provided for that evaluation. Following that, at 4:45 Eastern, we'll have a panel session on unmanned aerial systems and policy implications, and then finally our last session of the day is going to be with the faculty and librarians co-teaching with UCGIS. So I think that's it. Jeremy is the top of this, the lead coordinator for this session. Is there anything else that you want to say? Don't forget, you can go to the expo. The expo booths are open. Some of them are being staffed live. As soon as I can hop back in there and rearrange things, some of those will be staffed live. If you have a booth that if you're from a university or an organization that has created a booth and you haven't yet provided me with the schedule for when you'd like to be there live at your booth, please send me an email and make that happen. And don't forget students too. Tonight is the student happy hour lounge from 8 o'clock at 9 o'clock immediately after the faculty and librarian session, and I'm afraid it's BYOB for whatever you might want to be sipping on, but we would love to host you in that happy hour lounge. Okay, wow. Almost halfway through day one. Jeremy, over to you.
Great, thank you so much. I just first want to offer my congratulations to Beth, Joseph, and Brian. This is really the symposium is when we're able to honor people, and I really enjoyed hearing all of your comments, and it just reminds me, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants, everyone who's honored, it's just so nice to hear about all the people who influenced you, and these are richly deserved for you, so my congratulations to each of you for this great award. We have one more award to give, actually, and this one is a surprise for our award winner. As many of you know, Diana Sinton, Dr. Diana Sinton, our executive director, is stepping down after many years as executive director. And I'm very pleased to announce that she has been selected for the 2021 Service Award, I gotta hold this a little higher, to recognize her outstanding service as UCGIS executive director from 2000 to 2001. And this service award is given occasionally to recognize individuals who have significantly contributed to the growth, development, and ongoing success of the organization. And I want everyone to know that this is being presented on behalf of the UCGIS Executive Committee, which includes Karen Kemp, past president, Jane Reed, incoming president, and myself, Jeremy Menace, as well as the entire board of directors are also in on this. And this was a complete surprise, except for the fact that I chickened out, and this morning I told because it's an online situation, and you know, but we have this really cool trophy, which I'm really excited about. But I do have, before I turn it over to you, Diana, for just a moment, I have just a couple of words to read off about why you're being presented with this award right now. As executive director, Dr. Sinton has worked tirelessly to advance the UCGIS mission of geographic information science, research, education, and policy, and to bring the GIS&T higher education community together. Dr. Sinton brings a unique combination of administrative skills, leadership, and geographic information science expertise that has allowed UCGIS to flourish under her directorship. From the most mundane administrative details to complex financial and legal management, to the highest level of organizational strategic planning, Dr. Sinton has played a leading role. And I think everyone needs to know of all of the things that happen behind the scenes in this organization, including in this symposium. It's Diana that is really, you know, responsible for so much of that and such a varied skill set. I'm not done now. Besides her diverse set of skills, one of the key reasons for Dr. Sinton's success is simply that she cares about the academic field, about the profession, about UCGIS as an organization, and of course about the students, faculty, staff, practitioners, and professionals that make up our community. It is clear that to Dr. Sinton, being executive director is not simply a job, but a position with which she is personally invested. When Dr. Sinton is on a task, you know it will get done on time, and it will get done well with thoughtful consideration. Her contributions in this regard go above and beyond that of a typical executive director. Importantly, executive director is not the only professional role for Dr. Sinton. She also serves as an adjunct associate professor at Cornell University and is an internationally recognized expert on GIS and T education in both K through 12 and university settings. Dr. Sinton's stellar reputation as a scholar and her academic contributions to GIS and T education have raised UCGIS's programming and professional profile to new heights in preparing the next generation of GIS and T teachers and researchers. So on behalf of all of UCGIS, Diana, I want to say thank you for your exceptional contributions as executive director. And I and everyone else is so happy to continue to work with you in your evolving role as Senior Research Fellow in the organization. So thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to you if you have a few words to say. That would be great. Although I know this is a total surprise, so but on to you.
Jeremy, Karen, Jane, I always look up at the list of all of the people that I work with every day, the list on my bulletin board. I am absolutely floored. I am honored. I absolutely could not do all of the work that I do if it weren't for the team that we all actually are together. All of the presidents that I've worked with in the 8 years I've been here, blocks me for hiring me on an interim basis, calling me and say, could you help us out for 6 months while we sort through some things? And I'm like, oh, I guess I could try. So it was, it's really been a very special opportunity to share energy with this group. And I believe so much in this organization and all of the things that the great work we've done in the past 25 years and the exciting things that we're going to do going forward. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Karen. Again, everyone, thank you to the board of directors and everyone else who managed to keep this almost entirely a secret. Oh my gosh. And for the sense of humor that everyone has, because if it weren't for everyone's sense of humor, you know, these can be trying times, trying technical times too. So bless you all. I'm just, thank you very, very much.
That's wonderful.
All right, I'm going to go cry.
I'm glad you're touched. I'm really happy. So
yeah, and okay, so that's really the end of this session, and we will get together at the top of the hour for our next time, and check out the expo, check out the booths, go for a walk. Everybody, if you've been sitting in front of a computer for the last few hours, turn off your screen for a few minutes, go for a walk, and we will we'll see you all later. Thank you.
all right, we'll see you at the top of the hour for the environmental sustainability session, which is coming up. Thanks everyone. Congratulations, everyone.